Commander Riker thinks Worf is trying to fill another inside straight. Data has the best poker face Riker's ever seen, and it will cost Riker 20 to make the determination of whether Data has a flush or a full house. Wow. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 4, Episode 6, entitled Legacy, written by Joe Menosky, directed by Robert Shearer. This was October 27th, 1990. Where were you? How you doing today, Cirroc?
Pretty good. Pretty good. October 1990.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
All
doing
right.
good.
So this is a kind of a famous episode. I didn't really remember it too well. I know I've seen it once before a long time ago, but everybody knows this as Tasha Yar's sister, right? Tasha Yar's
Yeah.
sister. Would have been cool to find out if Denise, well, we'll ask her next time we see her, if Denise knows anything about this. I'm sure it's been mentioned, or she's done a panel with her, or they've done photo ops. I'm sure there's something. But were you surprised to find all about Tasha Yar's sister?
Surprised, absolutely. Yeah, I was surprised. I'm surprised in general that for a character that they killed 3 seasons ago, right?
Yeah.
That character is still like at the tip of everybody's tongue on this show. It's like uh it's kind of amazing to me that they're paying so much homage to her, and it kind of, to me, contradicts with the sense that I got that the terms that she left on were not 100%, um, amicable.
Mm-hmm.
And if if they dismissed her in such in a abrasive way, it seems weird to be paying homage to her so much throughout the course of this show. So, I mean, all the way up till the new Picard show, right? I mean, they brought a Tasha Yar hologram during Data's kind of recovery of memory and stuff. So she's there from the beginning to the end, almost bookending the entire thought of Picard, of the Next Generation, which ends in Picard essentially. But it seems like that's a tremendous amount of homage to pay to a character that has, only technically appeared in one season. So, and the contrast to that would be, now I forget the doctor that was brought in for season 2 to replace Crush. Pulaski. Okay.
Diana Muldaur.
They don't mention Pulaski that much, right? Pulaski was there for a season. Pulaski did a whole
there for
season.
25 full episodes. That's even more than Tasha Yar. But they're just like, who? No, never heard of her.
Exactly. No. Exactly. They actually got rid of her with zero fanfare. She didn't even get like a Tasha Yar kind of death exit, with
nope.
She just got to like, oh, what happened to her? They didn't even mention her. They just
there was like one line or something where it's like, Pulaski has been transferred over to blah, blah, blah. And Beverly Crusher's back. And we're like, yay. Yeah. And the one Pulaski fan was like, wait, what? Just kidding. There's lots of Pulaski fans. But no, that's true. She just came in and out. And it just maybe it seemed like it wasn't like an unhappy parting, but it was more of an amicable parting, because I think both sides were just being like, this isn't working or something, whereas with Denise Crosby and Tasha Yar, it's the opposite. It was working, but the two sides didn't realize it or didn't like it. And so they parted seemingly not under the best of circumstances. And what everybody says, the belief is, that's been out there for decades, is that after it happened, both sides kind of had some regret, somewhat as to how it happened, somewhat as to the fact that it happened at all. Because, look, call it what you will, but Denise Crosby, had she stayed for 7 seasons, would be living a totally different life right now. Maybe not better, but different, because there would have been 7 seasons instead of 1. 6 more, so she would have missed out on some things. She would have gained other things. Right.
Should have done feature films as well.
Exactly.
Right?
So it's not necessarily a bad choice. We don't really know, but I feel like somewhere along the line there, the sides made up. But they didn't have like the Beverly Crusher thing where they said, well, let's just bring her back, because they straight up killed her. They killed her. She was dead. And also Denise was doing feature films, like you said. She was doing her own thing. So it feels like they made up, but there really wasn't a way for them to fully come back together. And that's why they brought her back for yesterday's Enterprise. They mention her constantly with fondness. They have a character that's her sister, that her sister, half of her role was just to talk about Tasha, right? So yeah, I agree. It seems like they really keep paying her homage and keep her in the zeitgeist of the show.
Which is amazing. And I wonder if it's because her storyline is so tied in with Data and Data's like character growth, because basically Data loses his virginity to her, right? I mean, that would be the same kind of equivalent, right? And so there's that special place that he keeps in his heart for her, and they keep that storyline. I think that storyline is so impactful, and also Denise as an actor played the hell out of that character so well that it's almost the essence of it is not easily removed from the Next Generation set, and so her spirit is there, and it keeps kind of doubling back and keeps becoming something that evidently the writers, who did you say wrote this episode?
Joe Menosky.
Joe Menosky. So
who
even
sounds
the writers,
like a hockey player, by the way.
Yeah, even the writers are attached to those characters, right? So these are all different writers that have, yesterday's Enterprise was a different writer, Joe Menosky. We've got all these different writers that are writing for the show, but even with all of them, they've all been impacted by the Tasha Yar storyline, to the point where here Joe Menosky decided to write an entire episode based on Tasha Yar's sister and going back to her home world, and so I just think that that's very interesting. The only thing that bothers me about the recollection of Tasha Yar when they do it in this particular way, it's the mention of these rape gangs that keeps popping up, and it's like, it's like, come on, let's just we got it from back in the first episodes and stuff. We don't need to keep hammering that point down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They're like, hey, remember the rape game? Yeah, we remember.
Yes.
Yes, we remember. Thank you. We don't have to keep picking at that scab. But looking up Robert Menosky, or Joe Menosky, sorry, Robert Shearer was the director. This is apparently his first Star Trek episode. I feel like I've heard his name 1,000 times, but I didn't realize this was his first written episode. Starting in season 4, he became part of the writer's room. He was story editor? Let me see. Executive story editor, part of the writer's room. This was the first episode that he himself wrote in season 4. Then he went on to be a writer on a show called Star Trek Deep Space Nine. He did 4 episodes there, Dramatis Personae, or Personae. He did Rivals in the 2nd season. He did Distant Voices in the 3rd season, and Time's Orphan in the 6th season. Then he moves on to Star Trek Voyager, and boy, he did a few episodes. He did like 8 episodes in season 3, 8 more in season 4. He did quite a bit, 8 more in season 5. He was 8 more in season 6. Like, he was pretty much all over the place in the middle seasons of Voyager. And almost lastly, this guy definitely is part of the family. He's in good with these people. He also wrote a season 1 episode of Star Trek Discovery, which is a rarity for somebody to
Wow.
do the legacy shows and Discovery. And he's written an episode of The Orville and 4 episodes of Ronald D. Moore's For All Mankind.
Wow, we just found a legend in the
I
game.
know, that guy's a treasure trove.
He's a legend and flying low under the radar here. Joe Menosky, shout out to Joe. And this is his first episode. So this is 1990. He's getting in the game. He's getting his first shot at writing an episode for Star Trek. And I think he did a great job in this episode. I want to say he took some of the elements of the poker, introduced that in the open. So we got a little bit of the poker, which is, I like the intros on the day-to-day activities of the character.
Me too.
Yeah, because when they go right into, we're headed to Alpha for the Squadron 4 and to research and then it becomes, I like getting in on a shot where they're just walking and talking. It might be some casuals, dating stuff.
Ramp up into it, lean into it. Give us, plus we care about these characters. We want to know their day-to-day. We want to know their slice of life. And the show that did it by far the best, of course, is Deep Space Nine. We were spoiled by that. Remember? Every episode started with Quark and Odo talking about the Danubian mud squirrels that have been in, whatever, or O'Brien and Bashir playing at the Alamo. We always got these things, and then it'd be like, Captain to Bashir, report to my, okay, and then we get into it. And so you expect that to happen in Next Generation, and it's hardly at all. We get like little tiny things, but yeah, I agree. This was the first time we got like an extended version of that.
Yes. And so Joe Menosky has a good feel for that thing as a viewer that we like to see, which is open in on the day-to-day slice of life, the banter between fellows. So we get to see the kind of inside jokes that they make with each other, like, what are you there? You're trying, you don't want any cards data. Just the little moments there, which I love, And then I'll double also back on that poker idea too, because I think that was an interesting kind of double entendre for what the episode was about, right? It starts with poker, and essentially the episode is about poker, meaning
bluffing.
Bluffing. It opens with Data bluffing, we assume, and then it kind of closes with Data getting bluffed, right?
Right.
So
that's a very good point. Because Data, he has the perfect poker face, and you can't read him. But now you're right. I didn't even think of that, but I should have, because Star Trek's great at this. The shoe's on the other foot, where he was not able to read somebody else's bluff. He was not able to say, hey, show me your cards. Wow, that is exactly it. You're right. Even when Riker was like, I want to know what cards you have, and Data was like, you basically have to call to find out.
Yes.
And with her, we don't know where her allegiance lies until they finally call and say, all right, well, then we have to do the plan, and we'll just have to sit there, sitting on our hands and hope that you don't betray us. Wow, you're right. That's spot on. I wish everybody would catch that with this episode, because that's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, so that's again Joe Menosky kind of taking us into the episode without even us knowing we're getting into the episode. So It's poker, right? We're just happy watching poker. I'm happy to watch it. And then we get this little, and I guess Riker's known for being the elite poker player, right? I guess he's the best poker player on the ship or whatever. So Data has been catching up, right? As the seasons have gone along. It first started out with Data like, what is poker? What is this thing? Now we've got Data like, well, you got to call me if you want to see what I got, and giving the impression that he has a 5-card hand by not asking for more cards. That's automatically a good bluff maneuver. If you were playing a poker game with somebody, you would ask for no cards. Even if you had a crappy hand, nobody would really assume that you had a crappy hand, because they would say, of course he would want to draw 3 cards or whatnot.
Totally.
So it's a good bluff maneuver as a poker player to say, no, no, that's okay. I don't need any cards, because it makes you automatically assume you have a 5-card hand. You've got a straight, you've got a flush,
Yep.
you've got a full house. You've got a 5-card hand where all the cards are being used. So that's why you don't want any more cards. So
Yeah.
it's a great bluff in general to say, no, that's okay. I don't need any more cards.
That's a scary thing is if the person across from you says, I'm good. I'm going to stay right here. You're like, all right, I'm just going to go ahead and fold. I'm just going to, I don't, you may be bluffing, but it's a good bluff. So I'm just going to, you know what, whatever I have is not going to beat that. So I'm moving on.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So I like that a lot. And I do love the poker scenes. We know Melinda Snodgrass was the one that started that up.
Yeah.
And this was the most extended version with, a few jokes put in there. And that's why, at the top, the trivioids, I was like, let's just do all the poker trivioids, because they're like joking and there's little banter and Data's even talking a little shit. He's like, well, it will cost you 20 to make that determination, sir. It's pretty good. And then now so Data always has the advantage of nobody being able to read him. And now Data is always learning lessons throughout this series of how to become more and more human. Now he's finding out what it's like when he can't read somebody else, but the stakes are much higher. And then, of course, we're led to believe that he says, I'm fortunate that I don't have these emotions, but we're all like going like, no, Data, you're sad. You miss Tasha and you're sad about Ishara. When she kissed your cheek, you started thinking, well, maybe, and he feels dumb and sad now.
He did feel something. I know that. I felt something. So I want to say that the pace of this episode was well done, in my opinion. I didn't find myself saying it's moving too slowly or too quickly. I thought it went at a very acceptable pace for me. It just kept moving right along, right to the next, right to the next. The first time I checked the clock, it was at 15 minutes, and I was like, whoa, 15 minutes already went by? Like, that's kind of, more time elapsed than I thought. And then again, the next time, basically every 15 minutes, I checked the clock to see how much time I had left. And every time I was pleasantly surprised by the pace moving so quickly. I was like, wow, this 45 minutes is flying by really quick, considering also that you have a guest star, a guest planet, a whole bunch of new stuff that you're introducing into an episode. And the pace still felt natural to me. It still didn't feel overly rushed or, missing or incomplete. It felt like it had all of the main issues that needed to be hit were hit. What's going on between the planet, the fighting between these two factors on the colony, the Tasha Yar backstory kind of seamlessly integrated, the distrust that the colonists had for the Federation on their end, and how that was revealed through the dialogue, cut to them talking when Starfleet's not there. Different things I thought were well done as far as the writing and the pace.
Yeah, I agree. It just kept moving. I mean, it didn't fly through, but there were no slow moments. We even got 2 epilogues. Like, for example, the episode could have ended with Data shooting Ishara, and then Riker saying it was set to kill. And maybe Data, then Riker checks her and he says she's dead. And they could have just had like shared a moment there where he says, well, we should, take the body with us, and then Data says, no, it's better to leave her behind, or something like that. He goes, understood, 2 to beam up, credits, right? It could have literally just ended like that. But instead we get an epilogue kind of with, they bring her back, she's alive, there's this whole toil with this guy, then a second epilogue, because he could have just said, beam her back, Mr. Data, go escort her, and then credits. We get it. Okay. But then we get a second epilogue, their moment between them. And then there was a third epilogue with him and Riker. Like it just, but that was cool because we kept getting more and more closure. It was like the story didn't end when the story kind of ended. We got more, and then he talks to Riker, and then he looks down, and we all go, "I see you, Data. There's no tears, but you're sad." But yeah, I agree. We got a lot in that episode because there wasn't like a B plot, so we just kind of followed it along.
Yeah, the actor that plays Ishara, kudos to her because I thought she also did a great job. Seems like a familiar face that I remember seeing in that time period of television and movies.
She definitely has that face. She almost, actually, now that you mention it, she kind of has a Linda Hamilton kind of face, from the Terminator movies.
Yeah.
But she has a very late 80s to 90s face, right?
Yeah. Like RoboCop.
Yeah.
Some movie that I remember watching where
her name is
in it,
Beth Toussaint, and her main picture on IMDb is from this episode, which makes you think this may have been the biggest thing that she did.
Okay.
She was in Babylon 5 for one episode. She was in Scream 3.
Okay.
Quite a bunch of projects. Melrose Place, The Commish, Matlock. Oh, these are fun.
Commish.
21 Jump Street, MacGyver, Growing Pains, Dallas. So that's pretty, Cheers.
Yeah.
Definitely had that.
Yeah.
Definitely had a good
that's
job.
What I'm saying. Growing Pains is probably where I saw her and stuff like that. That's around that time period of stuff. Even Melrose Placey kind of stuff. It's somewhere that I remember seeing her face. It's a familiar face. And she did a great job as a guest actor in this particular one.
Totally. I used to love Growing Pains. And like the funny thing is, I look at her and I'm like, okay, so 4 years prior on Growing Pains, my guess is she was like a Michael Seaver girlfriend or something. You know what I mean? Like a few years younger, like that about fits, like a Michael Seaver girlfriend. And then a couple years after this doing Cheers, she's probably somebody Sam Malone is chasing after, or I could also see her as like a lawyer, that comes in and says, sorry, this bar's being closed, or, some kind of thing. You could definitely picture her. I kind of want to see like now I want to go to every one of these episodes and see the role she played, because I could definitely see her in multiple different kinds of roles, but I thought she did great.
She did great. Definitely played the character well as far as having that resentment for her sister. I thought the scene where Picard speaks up on Tasha Yar's behalf and says, the woman I remember did this and she was battling these things and did that. Kind of went through a litany of Tasha Yar's greatest hits that earned respect in Picard's eyes. I thought that kind of monologue was another way you write well for your captain. This is how you make your captain appear to be compassionate and observant and wise, by having the kind of temerity in those moments to speak in the way that he did, to kind of comfort her, reassure her that no, her sister wasn't this person that she claims that she is, and gives the reasons why. So I thought that was also another way in which you make Picard look like a very competent leader on this show.
Yeah. So now, got to go to our break. I'm still basking in the afterglow of your metaphor with poker and this episode. I'm like, boy, I'm gonna be skipping around all day with that one. That was really good. We're gonna take our break, everybody, and we're gonna compose ourselves, and then we'll be right back on the Seventh Rule. Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc, the game changer Lofton.
Hello.
Or maybe you should have like a name like Split Finger or Knuckleballer. Were you like, did you have a favorite pitch that you used to do? Like you were a fastballer. Yep, I knew it.
Fastballer.
With that height and that strength, your fastball was impossible to hit. So here are the trivioids of the week, everybody. Commander Riker thinks Worf is trying to fill another inside straight. Data has the best poker face Riker's ever seen. Poker face. It will cost Riker 20 to make the determination of whether Data has a flush or full house. Turkana 4 is completely lawless. The Coalition has taken the Alliance's last crate of Telluridian synthale. Ishara Yar calls Data a device. Tasha never spoke of Ishara. Tasha Yar's previous captain owed Picard a favor. Tasha Yar was especially close to Worf, Riker, and Data. Ishara Yar completely trusts Data, and Ishara gives Data her implant, so he won't forget her.
Yeah, that was weird.
At least he cleaned it. It wasn't like all gristly. I think when they pulled it out at first, it was like kind of gristly.
Yeah, that was weird. It's like, here's my hemorrhoid. Just, anytime you miss me, just hold on to it.
Give this a squeeze. See if there's some juice that comes out.
Yes, it's a weird thing to give something that was implanted inside of you. I don't know. That was kind of a weird thing to me.
Yeah, so I'm looking at actually Beth Toussaint, who played Ishara Yar. I'm looking at pictures of her in previous roles. It's really cool to see her in different looks, So she's definitely played a lot of professionals. You could tell she kind of holds herself like a lawyer or a boss or a toughie, you know what I mean? So it's cool to see her in these different things. I did see one.
What about that hairdo?
I'm not the biggest fan of that hairdo, but it's definitely 1990. You could look at that and you could narrow it down to the month. You're like, September, October 1990.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Let me see the back of that. Is there a mullet? Is there a rat tail? Let me see.
Yeah, that's totally what I was looking for. I was looking for the mullet, the rat tail, any kind of, other dating aspect. But no, that's definitely a late 80s, very early 90s do. It seems, now in hindsight, you can see it as dated, but, at the time, they're like, let's give her a cool, futuristic.
Yeah, futuristic. You can't see right here, but she got her acid wash jeans on. She's all set, man. Pegged pants. And those pants are very pegged, too. That's another thing.
Yeah, that was a kind of a revealing outfit she had on, though. I thought it was kind of one of those tight outfits. But there was a guy in the scene where she was eating where she was discussing with Data, and in the background there's a guy playing 4D chess or whatever.
Yeah.
But I noticed he's playing by himself, and I'm like, there wasn't another person sitting across from him. He's wearing all red. He's in the background.
That's so funny. Okay, so full disclosure, I'm a bit of a nerd. I have played chess against myself before. However, I want to be honest with you. I don't recommend it because I realized there was never a winner. Because I can't, if you try equally hard for both sides, you can't win or lose. I would just keep outsmarting myself or outdumbing myself. I don't know. But anyway, that's interesting. I didn't know this.
Yeah.
But that scene, actually, I wanted to ask you about that. That scene was really interesting to me because you had the rolling camera, with the dolly or whatever. And they spent a fortune on extras that day. If you'll notice, everybody hit their mark. It's rolling like this. And then this guy comes in and says hello. And he sits down and this dude's doing. I actually found myself, it was hard to pay attention to what was going on because I was so impressed with just kind of the whole mise en scène, as they say, right? It was a cool scene.
Yeah, it was. And that kind of camera work I've seen used in interrogation scenes. So in the movie Deep Cover, there's a moment where he's being interrogated and the camera moves like that. In the movie Scarface, when Al Pacino is first detained by the police, the camera's moving around him in a circular motion like that, and they're like, "Where'd you get that scar from?" And there's that scene, and so I I've seen the use of this circular motion of the camera kind of going around somebody being used as a way to interrogate, or it's a probing type of thing. It's like we're trying to figure out what your deal is type of camera movement. And so I've seen it used like that, and it was appropriately used in this case because they were playing this kind of dance of like, let's see if your intentions are truthful. And she came across, by the way, as very believable for me throughout the episode. There was no moment where I was like, had it not been for the little cutaway to the other gang leader saying, let's make sure you give me all the information you can on these people.
And she says it's working, right?
Yes. And without those kinds of extra little inserts, I would have no idea I was being played by her, because she was being truthful about certain things. And that was another kind of thing I've heard recently, where if you are truthful about certain things, nobody really questions everything else, right? Those glaring truths end up becoming the only thing somebody sees. So if you cleverly mix the truth with some lies, but the truths are big and in front of your face, you won't see the lies that are kind of a little behind the door. And I thought that was well done in this episode, because she did, when they asked, we don't even know the location of where the men are being held or where the ship crashed. And she says, it's right over here. Turned out that's exactly where it was, because Geordi went into there and went into the computer system. And, when she said, I'm going to find, the guys are right behind that door, and they opened that door, the guys were behind that door being held, the people they were looking for, right? So these were all things that turned out to be truthful. And that's what gave us the impression that, maybe she is legitimate. Maybe she has good intentions, but clearly that wasn't the case. But I do like the way that was written into the script, because those glaring truths that happen to be, if those guys weren't behind the door, it's obvious it's a setup. If she doesn't actually know the location of where the shuttle pod landed, then it's clearly she's just BSing. It's a bluff. It's a setup. So all of these little things, all these smaller truths, made us let our guard down, and I thought that was appropriate writing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, they smartly made it Tasha Yar's sister, not just for the story, but that makes us automatically inclined to like her and trust her. We're not going to be suspicious of her. We're going to be like, oh, it's Tasha Yar's sister. Oh, they fought. They don't like each other, but it's, it's Tasha Yar's sister. But I will say, when she was saying that she's going to join Starfleet Academy and the Federation, that's where I'm like, uh-oh, is she going to die? Because anytime they do that, they're like, right after this successful mission, I'm going to join Starfleet and I'm going to make a difference. And we're like, oh, you're going to die, aren't you? So, and I do feel like the usual Star Trek way would have been for this character to die. And then for Data to always be kind of left wondering, did she even mean any of those things she said, right? I expected her to die. I forgot how it ended. And she should have died. But obviously he did stun her. So there's, Data wouldn't have killed her. But then, something else could have happened. Or they maybe could have had to leave her behind or something like that. But I did expect her to die. And I can't help but wonder if part of the reason she didn't die was because they thought, just in case we can bring her back. Because they're like, we kind of learned our lesson with Tasha Yar. We killed her. Yeah. We can never bring her back. When somebody survives, they always think we can bring her back in a different season. She can come back, and that, Data, it's Ashara. Cut to commercial. What? Ashara's back. You know what I mean? So I feel like they did that deliberately, because they're like, let's leave this door open in case we want to have her again. It's certainly possible. It's a character that could be used again.
Yeah, and I saw Data was ready to walk through that open door. It looked like he was going for the back-to-back sister deal.
Yeah, he was just like, hey man, if it's got a last name of Yar, let's see what happens. Like maybe he just felt like it was like some kind of weird like poker analogy, where every time he gets, a two of hearts or two queens or something like that. He wins. And so he thinks, there's another Ashara, there's another Yar here. Let me see. Like he's calculating. I don't know, but he was definitely smitten.
Yeah.
In a way that he's only been smitten for Tasha in the past, which is kind of weird. It's kind of weird being like, your sister's dead, but you're cool.
Yeah, that was it was kind of weird. He said, she says to him early on in the episode, he says, I'm an android. And she's like, built for fighting. And he looks at her like, like, it's not all I'm built for. Like, so
change a few letters.
Yes. I'm built for some kind of F word, but
she's like, built for fighting. He's like, I am trained in multiple techniques of fighting.
Yeah. So that was the first indication. I was like, Data has kind of like, he has, the thought is in his head. You could tell it was like his circuitry, his CPU was trying to process that information. And then later on, she says, are you able to have friends? And he's like looking, he's like,
you could call it that.
Yeah, the look on his face is like, yes.
It was a lot of that stuff was very subtly and well written, but it didn't feel subtle to us because we have that idea in our head where it's like, we know Data and Tasha did that. And so now he sees her. So all we need is a little glimmer. And we start going, oh boy, Data, what's going on here?
Yeah, exactly. When he says, I would like to consider you my friend as well. I was like, I bet you would. I bet you would, Data. So there was like the subtext was there, and I thought that was cleverly done as well. Good writing for me because, like you said, as the audience, we know what the history is. He doesn't outright say, me and your sister hooked up. He doesn't say it like that, but it's, we as the audience know that, so it's implied. And there's moments there where the double entendres work well. For example, like where he says, Troy says something to the effect of, Data, are you having some kind of feelings for her? And he was like, I have become used to her.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a very like, it's funny way to say you like somebody.
When he said, and he said that at the end of to Riker, when he said something like, it's almost as if I'm experiencing a feedback loop, of my mnemonic, whatever. I thought Riker was going to say, me too, Data. I feel like I'm having I'm experiencing a feed loop too, Data. I thought that would have been a nice line for him to just say, like, I agree with you. I'm feeling the same thing. However, first of all, I didn't think it was appropriate for her to kiss him on the bridge. That's a weird place to do it. But also, I noticed Worf started flirting with her when she said she's going to go to the academy. He's like, we would be lucky to have you. I'm like, dude, calm down. She's been on the ship for like 20 minutes, and Riker and Data and Worf are all just flinging their clothes off at her. She's like, geez, I'm going to like Starfleet. Yeah. Or maybe she's like, geez, never mind, guys. I'm going to go back to going to the Coalition and killing people. That was a little much.
I'll go back to the rape gangs. No, thank you, Worf.
No, thanks. But I will say, actually, since we're running already kind of low on time, one thing that I thought was really good was the twist, where it turns out she was double-crossing them, but she wasn't doing it to screw them over. She was doing it to wipe out her enemy. She was using them to get to their enemy, in a vulnerable position and make them more vulnerable. And I was like, that is a really smart twist that I did not see coming. I thought that was maybe the best part about this episode, was just great twist. It works. It's smart. It makes sense. It all fits. I thought that was an A+ twist personally.
I do too, and I'll tell you why. First of all, she tells Data at some point, "Get out of here," like she's basically warning him, the thing's going to blow or whatever, and she reveals that she had those motives, and so, like I said, some things were truthful, so she was truthfully helping them achieve their goal, while simultaneously deceiving them about her other ulterior motives of accomplishing her other goal, right? And so that was cleverly done. And the reason I think it was clever as well is because Picard interrupts Riker at the end when Riker's kind of chewing them out about, lying to them and being deceptive and this and that. And she nearly, she killed 2 people and or whatever it was that she was, guilty of as far as her crimes that she committed on the way to helping them. But what I thought was kind of unspoken, but it was spoken through the emotions and the facial expressions of Picard, was when he raised his hands, kind of an emotion like enough, number one.
Yep.
And then he kind of basically returns her back to them, right? And I think what was not said there, but is implied, is she was deceiving us by not giving us by not telling us the entire truth and using us to accomplish her objective. However, we were also deceiving her and using her in order to accomplish our objective. And I will say the deception on their part of Starfleet was that they were open and willing to negotiate with whoever was going to help them accomplish their goal. So they weren't necessarily on the side of the coalition or on the side of the alliance. If the people from the alliance had come forward and said, "Hey, if you give us a bottle of some synthahol, we'll return the,"
they'd be like, "Ishara who?"
Yeah, exactly.
Bye.
Exactly. Yeah, so and Picard makes that clear when he says, "We will maintain this course of action with them, but we will also entertain other possibilities as well," right? This is the only way we have going forward to resolve what we need. But if some other ways were to happen to arise, if the Alliance contacted us, if something else if we were able to get it done without their help, we would just go and do it without them and not even, deal with them at all. So in that way, they are too being slightly deceptive in the same way she is being deceptive, which is not revealing the whole of your plans or your intentions or your truth, just enough that you need to move forward.
Well, here's a question for you, though. Who gets the home run of today's episode, in your opinion?
Well, the home run goes to Data again.
Wow.
Brent Spiner for me is the home run on this one. When he when he says to her, "You deceived us," like when he confronts her in that moment, he seems really heartbroken, like, "You deceived us." And she's like, and she goes in and he says, "Yeah, but you didn't," like, he's really like, he can't understand what the hell's going on. Like, you lied to me, it's like, so that was great. And also at the end when she says, "Data, if it helps any, I really did feel some special way about you," something like that, or the conversation we had made me feel the closest to a friend that I've ever had. And if it helps any, that's the truth, right? And instead of responding, he looks at her, and with this just emotional face, the eyes, everything, and he says, "Energize," with almost like his choke up in his, like he was about to cry type of energize. I thought that's A+ as far as performance goes. So Brent Spiner, once again, to me is the best thing on Next Generation. I love
a lot of people agree with you there. Yeah. And what's interesting about that is, on the surface, android, he just says energize, doesn't say anything, doesn't act anything, doesn't do anything. But we watch because we're looking for it. So he gives us just enough, like he didn't say energize. He opened his mouth for a second or two to make us think something's going to happen and then says energize. That pause, as humans, we see that and we think there was something there. He looks down at the chip. There was something there. We can't help but add some personification. That's what we do. And he gives us just that hint. Brent Spiner does, as the excellent actor that he is.
Yeah.
My home run of the day, though, by the way, I'm going to give it to Ishara Yar. Good for her. Great job. Joe Manosky did a good job as well. Data was awesome. But I'm going to give it to her. I forgot her. Beth Toussaint, I believe it was. Great job there. Here are our pals that we would like to thank this week. Same as last week, I bet. Their names are Homer Frizzell, Dr. Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Titus Mohler, Dr. Mohamed Noor. I think we'll see him in the free-for-all. Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anil O. Polat, Joe Balsarotti, Mike Goo, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, My Live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allyson Leach-Heid, Julie Manisfee, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Tim Baum, Chris Sternett, the Roddenberries, that's the STLV house band, and of course, Jason Okun and Greg K. Wickstrom. All right, friends, we will see you on the other side on the free-for-all. We'll be right back on the Seventh Rule. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Seventh Rule. Oh, my goodness, it's the free-for-all with Cirroc Lofton. Of course, Melissa Longo is here. Jason M. Okun is here. Thank goodness for that. Yeah. Faith Howell is in her favorite spot on the helm of the Enterprise D. Dr. Mohamed Noor is back finally with blue skies behind him. It's beautiful. The Dark Lord Chris McGee has joined us. Carrie Schwent's calling from Wrigley Field. That's pretty cool. And Allyson Leach-Heid is in the car on the way to a professional soccer game herself. We got a lot of sports today. It's going to be a sports episode. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
Pretty good episode, actually. I enjoyed it, so I'm going to give it about an 8.1.
8.1. Does anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know?
7, 8.
I didn't look.
7.2.
So I'm going to guess 7.6.
7.8, 7.2, 7.6. Mohamed, you already know?
I don't know. I was going to guess 7.5, I think.
All right. All right. They're all saying lower than you, Cirroc. I don't know if that bodes well for us, but the correct answer is Paul Pierce, surprisingly.
Wow.
Also Paul George and a lot of other Pauls. 6.7.
What?
I believe that.
Wow.
I know. 6.7. That's rude.
Shame.
Did we get any non-appearance mention? Was there a non-appearance mention today?
No, don't know of any.
No.
I mean, all we got was Tasha,
we did get,
I think, right?
Nope, one another. Armis.
Oh,
That is very good. Oh, that's right. A malevolent entity, right? Something like that.
Exactly.
Excellent. All right. What about some kinds of, or some sorts of, or of some sort?
None that my ears could hear. Anyone else?
No.
All right.
That'd be a no.
Well, Melissa Longo. Great shirt, by the way. It's a Jake.
It's brand new.
Beautiful shirt. Get us started off on the right track, please. Let us know what you thought of this particular episode if you finished it.
I did finish it. I watched it 3 times because I was watching it while I was making bracelets. And so, distractions, multitasking. But anyway, I like this episode for a couple of reasons. Not only because Ishara Yar reminds me of Linda Hamilton, but specifically in Terminator. But but I also like that this episode kind of felt like a building on Tasha Yar's story even more. It felt like she was a huge part of this episode because she was, but I like that. I like that she's still included in this universe because it makes this universe feel authentic. And I also like Data. Again, I love Data and I love what he represents. And I love that he's a resource to explore our own humanity. And I think this is because there's no pretense to him. He's you know what you're getting when you're with Data. And you you can trust Data because he's not going to judge you or put your human expectations on you of what they expect you to be or who they expect you to be. There's no judgment. It's what you see is what you get. And I love that about Data. And that's so rare to find in the universe. And I also love that I have emotions and feelings because those are very important things to have, even the ones that hurt.
They sound fun. Melissa's the kind of person that if somebody talks over her favorite song, she replays the whole thing.
Yes.
But who doesn't though? Thanks very much, Melissa Longo. Jason M. Okun is here with some very good observations, I bet. What do you think of this one?
Well, it's certainly a solid episode of Next Gen for sure. Is it one of the best? No, it isn't. It's certainly not one of the worst. I think one of the reasons why the rating on IMDb may be so low is to some degree it does have a certain level of continuity, and perhaps it's the exception that proves the rule. And the thought process was maybe when these episodes are more standalone, at least in that context, they work a little bit better for Next Gen. And also, it obviously references a character from season one, and maybe not a lot of people have seen it or liked season one. So they may have felt a little disconnected from the story. It does require you to understand and have watched more than just, an episode or two of season one. Certainly have, should have seen the development of Tasha Yar, Armis and, the Skin of Evil. Otherwise, the context is kind of gone, and you don't have the emotional involvement. And you see sort of the reactions of the characters to Tasha's sister, and you don't relate to those reactions simply because you're not familiar with the subject matter. Again, I think the story moves along pretty well. Interestingly enough, I think it comes off better on the screen than it does on the page. I think that the script read a little boring to me. So I think the way it was brought to life was great. I think Brent is really, really good in it. And to me, it's more like a Brent and maybe a little bit of a Riker episode as well. And there's one little thing that kind of goes throughout the episode is when you see, so it's certainly scripted that way, where Data his sort of facial expression or reactions are unreadable. And if you see sort of the evolution, the way Brent chose to portray Data, at the end, he's certainly readable. Even though the script says he's unreadable, there's a little bit of something there under the surface. And you see that progression, and you see there's no emotion. Maybe there's emotion. Maybe there's no. It's that very sort of fine-tuned performance that is very nice to see. I think the way it was shot was pretty decent. It's a kind of a personal episode, so you see a lot more close-ups, a lot more of that kind of coverage rather than long shots and what have you. Yeah, there's a little bit of action in it, but that's not why we watch something like this. I think it's a solid episode. I like it perhaps better than the average rating simply because there's context for me. And I think for a lot of us. So that's probably why the disparity is there. Again, there's a lot more to say, but the last thing I'll say here is that it continues sort of this theme of family that goes through the fourth season, certainly the first part of it, and we're going to see it again.
That's a good point. Family, brothers, all those kinds of episodes. Thanks very much, Jason M. Okun. Faith Howell is here. What's up, Faith? What did you think of this episode? Top 5 episode?
Definitely not. I can absolutely answer Jason. It is scored much lower because people like me exist. And this girl came in and she hurt Data, and I will fight her. So that's where they lost points. I do think that this episode's strength is that it fleshes out sort of the emotional backstory of, or how our characters relate to each other and relate to the world. It does a lot of that pretty well. It definitely built out some depth in Data, and Riker for sure as well. I like that they touched back to some of the season one, even though I recognize as well that maybe that did lose a couple of casual watchers. And also, Melissa, I'm so glad you brought up Linda Hamilton, because I was last week years old when I found out from TJ that this was not Linda Hamilton. So I have lived my entire life completely sure that this was, because I was not a Terminator girl as a kid. She's also the main girl in Beauty and the Beast.
Yes.
With Ron Perlman.
Perlman.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I thought 100% it was her until TJ burst my bubble last week. So.
Yeah. Huge Linda Hamilton fan here.
Yep. One of the OGs right there.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Faith Howell. Great stuff as always. Dr. Mohamed Noor is here finally. It's like a holiday around here when Dr. Noor is here. But what'd you think of this one?
I mean, it was good. I actually remember it from first run. I had thoughts from the beginning, middle, and end. So for the beginning, I like the little card trick. And I have to admit, I did go back and replay because I want to see, did he actually put his finger on that and try to see if it's like, oh, I mean, it was a really fast thing. And I couldn't quite make out, but I could make myself believe that's what happened. So that was kind of fun. The middle, of course, I got drawn in on the genetics part because there was some references there to doing some DNA tests. It was interesting that Dr. Crusher was just like, yes, we're going to do that. Like, oh, I guess there's no consent on like DNA tests or something. It was a little intense. But then there was this weird reference to sonomic chromosomes. I guess they just made up that word, or maybe it's some future word that will be used in some time. And that doesn't exist. I mean, or they meant somatic and they just like messed it up. Yeah, fair enough. For the end, actually, I was curious about the set where they were doing the basically when they were down on the ground again, and that's where Shahryar got away. But luckily I had the Star Trek companion. I looked it up and it says in there, those are redrests of the Borg cube. It's like, oh, okay.
Is that a Larry Nemeczek creation?
Yeah, this is the original version. It only has the first 5 seasons. I got it at the time before 6 and 7 came out. So he calls it Old Blue. But yeah, but overall, fun episode. Interesting stuff, and yeah, engaging. Like I said, I remember it from first run too because I definitely missed Tasha. So good connections.
I did recognize the Borg feel actually. And somatic would mean something to do with sleep, maybe, but maybe sonomic would be like auditory. I don't know. What do you think?
Soma means body, right? So somatic is like instead of like germline, then it's like the ones in your body. So maybe that's what they meant, but. Okay, I don't know what sonomic is. I actually Googled it and it just went to Memory Alpha. I'm like, well, that's not helpful. That's just going back to the episode.
We got good wines over there in that county.
Yeah, that's where they meant the wines.
Thank you very much, Dr. Noor. That's right. The Dark Lord Chris McGee is here, everybody. Hide your family. What'd you think of this one? Cool shirt, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yes, indeed. Legacy, where the entire episode is just one long nam. Considering that Tasha is mentioned no fewer than 21 times throughout the episode. Although it's not a favorite of mine, like Jason, I did enjoy the episode for what it was, a way to help flesh out Tasha's history and family while also introducing Data to the concept of betrayal. Speaking of which, this isn't the first time that Data is betrayed by someone close to him. I guess he's learning about humanity's deceptive side the hard way. And judging by the way he responds to Ishara in the end, I'd say he is finally learning. Despite Ishara's story about considering the coalition her family, I find it hard to believe that Tasha would leave her then 10-year-old sister behind on a world where rape gangs ran rampant. But anyway, moving on. Like in the 3rd season episode, The Vengeance Factor, I think the betrayal is telegraphed in this episode and shouldn't be. I think the episode could have benefited from cutting that short scene of Ishara calling into Hain to say it's working. I think the audience should be surprised when the betrayal actually occurs. So for the memorable quote, I'll have more to say in the things I've done said, but for the memorable quote, I think you could all probably guess what phrase stuck in my mind from this episode. Haynes' weak excuse to preserve the peace.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Chris McGee. All right. Carrie Schwent out. She already knows. She was already unmuting herself right there. That was pretty good. Out in Wrigley Field. What do you think of this one?
I like this one. Of course, I like any episode that references Tasha in any way. And I would really like to be able to talk about the planet she came from and not call out what kind of gangs there were. I appreciate Worf, trying to be kind to Beverly, but we didn't need that line. And I also have the perfect scene too, in place of her calling in and saying it's working. Data should have taken her to the holodeck and showed her what her sister looked like when she was on the ship with them. Because she's walking down the hallway and she says, I don't even know what my sister looked like. There's a perfect opportunity to show that the hologram from her funeral, if nothing else, to show her what her sister looked like. And my notes are a little scattered because I'm not home at the moment, but I definitely like okay, no, there we go. Got the notes back in order. She was deceiving Data, but it shows how much that she did have some kind of feeling for him by her tone of voice, which she was urging Data to go before the thing exploded. She liked him enough to try to get him to safety before that exploded. And I think they definitely made a very, very, very large mistake by not putting her proximity detector back in before they sent her back down to the planet. Because now she's free to go back there whenever she likes and try as many times as it takes to get it right, because she's not going to set the alarms off anymore. And one fact that I found on Memory Alpha that I thought was really cool was this episode marks the 80th episode of TNG, which, if you do not count the cage, makes it one more episode than the original series. And they actually call out the original series in a roundabout way a couple of times. The planet that they were supposed to do the archaeological dig on is the planet from Turnabout Intruder, which was the last TOS episode. And there's also a mention of the Potemkin, I think, which was a ship that was in that episode as well. And yeah, every time I watch this episode, I have to remind myself that is not Linda Hamilton, because the two of them could be sisters. They look that much alike, and they almost even sound that much alike. But I love Data, so I decided to write the limerick from his point of view after Ishara has gone. So we've got the following. I truly believed that she was my friend, but all of us were used in the end. She played us all for fools. We were nothing but tools. Good thing we stopped where her path would have led. He might not have feelings as we define them, but he clearly has his feelings. And if you watch his finger very closely at the end when he's holding the disc, his finger moves just a little bit, so he's pressing the side of it just a little bit. So he does have his own feelings in a roundabout way.
Interesting.
At least that's what I think, anyway.
Reminds me of when he and Picard were rubbing the Phoenix. Do you three want to be left alone? Thank you very much. Carrie Schwent out in Wrigley Field. Enjoy the game. Allyson Leach-Heid is here on the way to a soccer game herself. What do you think of this one?
I'm going to sound like a broken record. This is not one of my favorites. Sorry, it's raining on my car, if you guys can hear it, or if I'm talking really loudly. And so as a kid, I didn't like it. I felt like they were kind of pushing the gang allegory really hard when I was a kid. I'm like, I don't like this. And, I'm a kid. I didn't want that hit over the head for me. I'm like, I want my fun Star Trek show. So I felt that was a lot. as a kid. As I get older, of course, I get what they're going for. They're just talking about things that we were living with and still live with. And the way they went about it was just a little hard. I love the costumes. They were full on late 80s, 90s. Like I had those puffy jackets. So I love the costumes. They do kind of put it in the time frame where it happened to me, along with her hair. Her hair was also kind of weirdly took me out of the episode. It always distracted me with how it moved. So those type of things kind of pulled me out of it. But I loved, of course, the poker scene with the card trick. Enjoyed that a lot. And I also really, really liked the redressed org sets because that was fun. It looked like they had a lot of fun shooting in there. They got to blow stuff up, throw people around downstairs, so that's exciting. So that's what I kind of take away from it now is like, it looks like they had a lot of fun doing this episode. So let's enjoy that. And it did feel a little after school, especially to me in a way, which I didn't like as a kid. So.
A little bit, yeah. Thanks very much, Allyson Leach-Heid. In a car in the rain in New Mexico. All right, Jake's final take. Cirroc, any final thoughts on this particular one? Still muted.
Yeah, I have a couple of final thoughts. One, the magic trick that they opened the scene with, the card that he was looking for was the Jack of Hearts. And it looked like Data got his heart jacked up in this episode.
Oh my goodness, that was good.
So that's one point. The other thing is I like the message that was given at the end with Riker when he talks about in all trust that we leave ourselves open to the possibility of betrayal. And there's a level of having to be vulnerable in order to be trustful. And I think that was well explained in this episode. Like, that is something that we have to deal with. And that's what we use our intuition to guide us. We use, our senses to help us understand whether somebody's being truthful with us and whether they are deserving of our trust. And I thought in this episode, the character did a good job of masking her intentions and earning that trust by giving up certain information that turned out to be accurate and true. So I thought that in that aspect of the writing, the character did a good job of earning trust. Because at some point I was trustful of this character had it not been for those very brief scenes where they show us that there's some other options or nefarious kind of business going on. So kudos to the writing for that. Also, this episode made me realize that one of the hallmark characteristics of Star Trek is emotionally unavailable characters. I think Spock is the first of that incarnation, the first emotionally unavailable character. Data is the next version of that. And I would say Odo would be also following in the footsteps of this history of Star Trek having very distinctly emotionally unavailable or detached type characters. So it's something that I like because it helps me. Watching them go through the discovery of finding emotions is what makes it interesting for me to watch as a viewer. I like to watch Spock learn a sense of humor, or Data find love, or Odo find love. And so those kinds of things is part of what makes science fiction, or in particular Star Trek science fiction, interesting for me and keeps me intrigued about the development of these characters. And then lastly, I will say that Counselor Troy, with these abilities to read minds and emotions, needs to do a better job of being protective of her friends. And if she sensed, which we could all sense, that Data had a thing or some kind of feelings for this character that there was something more than just the standard, protocol going on. There was a moment, for example, when he spoke up on her behalf and said, she wants to join Starfleet, and I think that it would be great and all this stuff. And he was going over and beyond what he needed to do as far as protocol. He was actually finding himself being interested in this person. And I think Troi, as a friend, needs to say, listen, I sense that this person has she mentioned ambiguity. She said, I sense ambiguity from her. If you sense that, then you need to tell Data, look, Data, I sense some ambiguity from her. I'm not sure that she's being 100% forthright with us. Just keep your guard up and don't become too involved in this. Like some kind of heads up warning, I think would have been great from Troi to Data. And also in general, like, she should be always kind of giving up this kind of information to help give her crew members some more information. They should be armed with more information. So yeah, those are my final takes. I thought it was a great episode for the reasons you guys laid out. Brent Spiner, again, is just one of the highlights of this show. He's just a superstar for the next generation, in my opinion. And I enjoy watching his journey throughout this show. So yeah, those are my final takes.
Jake's final take never fails. That's good stuff. Thank you very much, Cirroc. Thank you so much. That's it for us, everybody. Thank you to Allyson, Carrie, Chris, Mohamed, Faith, Jason, Melissa. Jason's given us a couple teases in the Zoom chat. I can't wait for things left unsaid to find out what's going on with all that stuff. For myself, Cirroc, Aaron Eisenberg, Melissa Longo, thank you all very much for hanging out with us. We will see you next time. And until then, always remember the 7th rule.